Hey, what's happening, guys? Back with another reaction. This time, first of all, I just want to say it's hot as balls in California right now. I don't know what we did to deserve this, but God have mercy. Have mercy on us. I'm back with another reaction. Today, I'm actually going to be reacting to something that is very near and dear to my heart. Um, Everybody who knows me knows two things. I love black people dearly, and not that I don't love everybody else, but I love black people dearly because they're my people. And uh, the second thing is how invested I am in what happened in the 2016 race between Clinton and Trump, and the role that Russia played in that election. I think that most Americans underestimate how effective Russia was in influencing the last election. And we do know that they attempted to, in Florida, actually hack into the voter machine, the actual system, the tallying system, unsuccessfully. But it's not widely known, but it was reported that in fact they did attempt to. And what we found out in 2016, when Robert Mueller conducted his investigation into the 2016 election, and what we most recently discovered from, or what was most recently, it was reiterated with the Senate Intelligence Committee report on the 2016 election. Now, the Senate is controlled by Republicans right now, right? These are Donald Trump's boys. They're his homies, and they even concluded that the influence in the 2016 election by the Russians was widespread, and it was used to help Donald Trump, to aid Donald Trump in winning the election. And furthermore, what they said, and these are his boys, right? Furthermore, what they concluded was that the Trump campaign willingly accepted that help. I, for the life of me, cannot understand why that alone wasn't enough to impeach Donald Trump and to remove Donald Trump. He was impeached, but to remove Donald Trump. The same people who concluded that the guy literally summoned help from an adversary of ours, right? An enemy of ours, Russia, summoned help from them in order to win an election. The same guys who said that are the same guys who refused to remove him from office when the House of Representatives, under the leadership of Nancy Pelosi, impeached the president. And I decided to do this reaction video today because I think it's important to understand, because a lot of people didn't read the Mueller report. It was fascinating. But what was discovered in the Mueller report was not just the fact that the Russians tried to influence and successfully influence the 2016 election, but it's how they did it. It's how they did it. And one of the reasons why I think that it's important to talk about this, particularly now, is because what we know is that the Russians targeted certain groups of people, Bernie supporters, whatever, but they specifically targeted Black Americans in this country. They did it through a mass social media um, influx of narratives like the super predators thing that Hillary Clinton said, comment that was totally taken out of context, but it was pushed specifically to Black Americans on social media to get them to not show up to the polls. And successfully, we saw a 6%, almost 7% drop in Black voter turnout. And it is, without a doubt, a result of the Russian campaign to discourage and suppress the vote here in America. I say this because we see the Russians coming back and doing it again. Not only do we see them doing it again, but we see them being successful at doing it again. Where you can go to the shade room, you can go to Baller Alert, and these their political posts, they don't have a lot of them. They're ramping them up now as we get closer to the election. But their political posts, you can actually go in the comment section and you can see, and thankfully people are starting to call them out, but you can see them actually pushing that same narrative about Joe Biden, right? The 94-95 crime bill. And we see Black Americans falling for it. And it's fine to go back to the 94-95 crime bill. I personally do not, because I think it's pointless. I think the 94-95 crime bill is that. It happened in 94 and 95. What I do know is what Vice President Trump and Kamala Harris's platform is to address police brutality today. What they're currently running on. Some people are the type of folks that dig way back into the ash heaps of your record to try to pull out anything. The point is that there's never going to be a candidate that never took a bad vote or, said something stupid every now and again. But what Russia has been successful at is making us believe that if these candidates don't check off every single box of yours, that you can just sit out of the race because, well, both candidates are the same. The truth is that in this race, as well as the last one, both candidates aren't the same. If this was any other politician running besides Trump against Joe Biden, I would give those arguments credence. Unfortunately, there has not been a discovery yet in Joe Biden's record that overshadows the complete and utter insanity that has been Donald Trump's presidency. So I think it is not only unhelpful to go back and pull all of these things out, but I also think that it's ignorant. It's ignorant because you're not realizing that you're not doing it on your own. I know it sounds weird, but there are operatives out there, right, that are actually on social media, on places like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, that have access to your algorithms, meaning they know based on what you post what kind of message to filter to you. And people are receiving those messages, and because they are not aware of what happened in 2016 in terms of what the Russians did, they are taking all of this information in and really spouting the Russian lines and going out there discouraging people to vote, and it's not just ordinary Americans. It is famous people, very famous people, and I won't name names because I just think that's irrelevant, but you know them, that are talking about withholding your vote and, talking about we need to, see this before we go. Black folks don't have a choice in this election, all right? You don't like Joe Biden? There was a time for you to talk about the fact that you didn't like Joe Biden, right? It was the primaries. Those are over. He is the nominee, and he is who every single black person in this country, dare I say, needs to go to the polls and vote for. Unless you, even if you're a conservative, you know, even if, as I said, if he was running against a different candidate, I wouldn't even be saying this. But the fact that we're running against someone who went out on stage in front of a sea full of white folk and made fun of your communities, denigrated your communities, misrepresented your communities by saying you had nothing to offer but poor education, drugs, violence, and all of those things, as if those things don't exist in other neighborhoods in this country. When you're dealing with somebody like that, the choice is so stark that there really isn't any room for discussion anymore. You know, you got another election in 4 years, and we could talk about all of that. But the fact of the matter is, right now, our number one priority in our community has got to be to get this president out of office. And Russia knows that. Russia knows that, and they understand that our livelihood, our existence here in this country, because Trump has already said, first of all, he instructed the police officers to do what they're doing, right? The excessive use of force. Go back to his 2016 campaign. He advised police officers to get rougher, get nastier, use more force. And that is exactly what they're going out and doing. So it is imperative for black folks to get Donald Trump out of office. Russia knows that. And that is why they are working overtime, just as they did in 2016, to make sure you don't go out and vote. I found this panel moderated by Roland Martin. For those of you who don't know who Roland Martin is, he's a political commentator, and I think he's a minister as well. Where they go into detail about how Russia targeted specifically black Americans, and I wanted everybody to see it, because here's the thing, and I say everybody because these narratives aren't just affecting how black folks move. It's not just affecting how black people move, because these kinds of narratives that are being pushed by the Russians are also creating animosity among so many different groups of people, right? It is changing the way decent white people look at what's happening in the news, right? In terms of the police killings. Whereas normally decent white folk would look at that and say, something ain't right. But because Russia has been so successful at sowing discord in our political process, good, decent people are now being so tribal that they can't even see the struggles and the issues that are affecting other people, right? Because the campaign that Russia is waging is causing us to squad up, right? So if you white, I'm gonna squad up with my white people. If you black, I'm gonna squad up with my black people. If you're gay, you're gonna squad up with the LGBTQ plus community. If you're Muslim, you're gonna squad up with Muslims. And which is fine, but then you get into this tribalism where it's like, I have to go out in order to get what I want. You can't get any of what you want. And let's just get into it. But I don't know if there's anybody else, holla if you hear me, that sees what's happening the way I see what's happening in our political process. It's dangerous. It is a threat to national security. No politicians have called it such, but I believe that what Russia is doing is a complete act of war being waged in what they call cyber warfare. It's cyber war. We are currently at war with them, and they're winning. So let's hear what Roland Martin and his panel has to say about what actually happened in 2016 and how it's happening all over again.
So the challenge is that what happened was what we did was we took the House Intelligence release of the 3,500 Russian ads, we dumped it into a database, and then we decided to look at who the targets were based on what the topics were. That was
So I'm just going to jump in right here. She said what they did was took all of the Russian ads from 2016. We know what ads were Russian and which were not, because if you watched Facebook's testimony on Capitol Hill, they said that the ads were being paid for in rubles or whatever their currency is. They knew it was that these were Russians paying for these ads to damage the Democratic Party, to discourage black voters from getting to the polls, and they accepted it anyway. They accepted it anyway, and a lot of people argue that Mark Zuckerberg should have actually warned Congress what was happening, why mysteriously all of these ads about the American election were being purchased by Russians, right? People want to know why that wasn't a red flag for Facebook and why they allowed it to happen. He testified, and his testimony was complete bullshit. But that's what she's talking about when she said they took all of the Russian ads. So let's keep listening to what this sister has to say.
House Intelligence Committee did it in May, and we did our report before the 2018 elections. And in that instance, we basically said that the ultimate target was to focus on black identity, to suppress the vote, and to rile up those who had racial tensions against black people. And if you look at the web of our data, you can actually see that black identity was connected to everything that was listed, which is like Second Amendment, Islam. We can go down to like connections to Tucker Carlson. Like everything was literally connected in our web, with the center and the intensity being black identity. Outside the web was other groups, which is why this part is really important, because now the Senate Intelligence Committee is basically saying, yes, we now know that not only race was targeted, but African Americans were targeted. So outside our spectrum of the web is Latino and Chicano issues. Outside our web is Native American, indigenous issues. And then there's like this really weird, funky, outside part that's like focused on like memes for white boys in college. But the intensity of the data shows how fierce and how targeted they were on not only using black identity to suppress the vote, but using black identity to rile up other groups.
And what you had is you had folks, you had these Russian trolls who were encouraging black folks not to vote.
Yes.
You had individuals who were saying Hillary is the exact same as Donald Trump.
Yes.
Don't waste your time. You go on and on and on. And what happened? There was a 2.4% decrease in black turnout. And you really had them targeting.
I think Roland needs to check his numbers on that. I don't know if he misspoke.
Saying that
much larger
Trump,
drop in black
same
turnout.
Policies. They were really amplifying the whole super predators comment. All those different things. They also discovered that one of the biggest Black Lives Matter Facebook pages was actually
run by.
Yes. Like there was so many. So the thing is, the way that we came to this information was that we were tracking how often we were seeing these fake accounts pretending to be black women, and for us who know how this works, black women are like the key to the black vote. And so the fact that they were pretending to be black women was on top of the issue. But this part about using the super predator key piece is really important, because there was no conversation about Trump and the way that he treated the exonerated five, right? But we have her being repeated all over the place saying super predator. We have issues where we're looking at the crime bill, but we're not talking about where some of that started. So using her as this prop up on this particular issue about crime was also key to kind of sort of suppressing some of the vote. Let's just be clear, though. I don't want to turn this into it was us that made this happen, because you have to understand that overwhelmingly white Americans voted for this guy. Like, some people may not have shown up to vote. Some people may have not been able to get to vote because of information that was being also disseminated falsely by the Russian IRA account. So they were basically telling people, oh, don't stay in line, just text your vote. That's voter suppression. So there was a combination of activities that were going on that includes the stuff that was happening on the ground and what we now know as digital voter suppression.
Question, right? So, considering the states that Hillary actually lost, is there data showing that the black vote was affected in those states? Like, is that Michigan, Wisconsin? Like, is there data,
Yes.
actual data that's showing that in these states, the number of the percentage of black voters were fewer than whatever they should have been? What does that data actually look like?
Yeah, there's 2 data points. The first one I want to talk about is the Brennan Center just put out their report that shows that between 2016 and present, there were over 17 million voters who were suppressed, and they show the states. The states purged, I'm sorry, not suppressed, but actually purged. Wisconsin is like the reddest state of suppression. In other words, the way in which they were purging was up to 18%. The other part that I always love when people ask this question, because they always bring up Michigan. So the troll farm framework about them both being the same in Michigan is where you see that happen, i.e. 90,000 people made it to the polls and decided not to vote top of the ticket. They voted completely down ballot.
Wow.
But left the top voided.
Which is rare as hell.
Rare on.
I mean, most people, most it's the highest at the top of the ticket, and then it just drops as you go down.
Yeah.
No. So in this case, we have the evidence. 90K literally left out top of the ticket and voted all the way down. And also, let's be clear, he won by 77K. So just imagine if that wasn't being pushed out there as a narrative.
So did the bots were the Russian bots responsible for people not voting top of the ticket?
No, so there's a conversation about psych ops versus what people actually do. So if they believed that they were both the same, they would not vote top of the ticket. So if the message is sent
Perfectly
out
reasonable
multiple
explanation.
times, which is disinformation, that these are the same people, i.e., by the way, super predator, but not exonerated 5, it somehow seems to miss people's thought process.
And that was us right there. We took the super predator comment in terms of black folks. We took it to the all-out extreme. Most of us have no idea the context in which she said super predator. Who can tell me, raise your hand, I can't see you, but raise your hand if you actually went back to the speech where Hillary Clinton used the term super predator and listened to the entire context of what she was saying. Raise your hand. I did. And what a lot of people don't realize is that she was referring to a specific type of person. Not only was she referring to a specific type of person, but she wasn't ambiguous about it. She went on right after she said that to describe what she thought and what she considered super predator. She said the kind of people who lack conscience, who would kill without regard, who would set kids up to be drug dealers at early ages, school-age children. She described what she was talking about, and I always said, even during the election, was, if that ain't you, why are you mad about that comment? Because as far as I'm concerned, the people with whom she described were, in fact, in my opinion, super predators. If you can kill without conscience, if you can, and remember at the time, this was at the height of crime in America in the early 90s. There was a considerable amount of crime. So, again, we fell for the okie doke, right? And again, what she's saying is that the real conversation should have been about how Donald Trump called for the execution of the Central Park Five, when, come to find out, they were actually innocent young men. But nobody even that wasn't even a topic in the 2016 election.
Do we know what areas in Michigan, and I know I'm getting really specific, but if we're talking about 90K votes and we're going to assume, say, 80,000 of them were for Hillary, do we know what areas, like, was it in Detroit? You know, were those votes cast in
Good question.
Dearborn, areas that you would expect that she would win, or were they all over? We're talking about just the entire state of
right
Michigan.
Now we're talking about the entire state of Michigan. So now I can make a comparison because the new data came out from the Brenner Center about which states that actually didn't vote top of the ticket in comparison to, by the way, those who were purged. Because the part that people still don't understand is, like, it's not just about people who are disenfranchised in a way that they don't think they should go out and vote, or being told wrong places to vote, polling places, text your vote, or all these other messages that they may believe that was being sent, by the way. And some of this messaging is still being repeated, but just FYI, some of this messaging is literally happening right now. But what's different is now we can now start to look at an overlay between what we now know as the states that were being purged and the overlay of the disinformation campaigns.
So two parts. There has been talk about the potential breaking up of Facebook because of this. One, how do you feel about that? And just in general, what are next steps in terms of preventing this for 2020?
So there should be next steps, but like as of today, what the Senate Intelligence Committee just reported out, we're 3 years late,
right,
trying to figure out, oh, this happened.
And that's thanks to the Republican Party and Senator Mitch McConnell. That's why. Senator Mitch McConnell has refused, and Trump has refused to do anything when it comes to protecting
because
our
they're
elections.
winning.
They have made excuses. And McConnell's not only very late to the game by saying, oh, I'll go ahead and allow the bill to go forward, which like Cambridge Analytica understood it, how they used it in other countries, and how they were very clear on how they were targeting white rural voters, and and how specific they were with certain phrases and how it was used. So the point was not that that wasn't an issue. The point that Shireen is saying is, how is it that you had this super elevated conversation with Hillary Clinton and super predators, but you had way down here Donald Trump saying, taking the full page ad out, and they should get the death penalty. So if there's
that full page ad just to, like, a full page ad to lynch these innocent boys in Central Park, that was not repeated. And I don't understand how we can have this conversation without.
No. What she's saying is, if you have like this much conversation here,
Okay.
and this little amount of conversation, what is actually driving this much conversation?
Okay.
So when really what it should have been is sort of like,
Right.
If there were a lot of conversation about black people, about super predators,
And if it was a both,
There should have at least been just as much.
I'm actually going to agree with Malik here in the sense that I heard both, but that actually adds to what Shireen is saying, because it made many African Americans feel like they're the same, that they're not different. That's what drove voter participation down.
And
so I heard the same conversation about super predators, and I heard a whole lot. Yeah, I heard a whole lot about Central Park 5.
that one.
Yeah, bruh. No, bruh.
If you look at the data, go ahead.
in the data, the Central Park 5 conversation was not in it.
Thank you.
But
You may have heard it in
like,
your
is there a
circle.
difference between black media and like mainstream?
No,
I think you have to.
I vote for mainstream.
Hold on one second, Shereen, go ahead.
So just so that we're clear about this, like, yes, our community has debates about this particular issue, but let's just also be clear. Hillary Clinton said super predator. She was the first lady. She did not write the bill. She did not vote for the bill.
Right.
She did not have anything to do with the bill out of her saying super predator, but none of that was talked about. By the way, the person who wrote the thing is running for office right now. The person who voted for it is running for office
But
right now.
Hillary Clinton was
But
the only.
Clinton, who is the president who signed off on it, was not punished for that, and you're punishing Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton.
No. One second. Hold on. One second. Again, I want Shereen to explain this to people because this is the difference. What Shereen is saying, correct me if I'm wrong. What you're saying is, if you look at the data, you had so much conversation, and you then ask yourself, and then when you start breaking apart the data, it's what actually is being reported. And so, again, if you take that, you take in the documentary The Great Hack and how it was, how certain phrases were used. She's saying is that, wait a minute, if you had this super high number of mentions of super predators on these social media platforms, in tweets, on Facebook. So if you had super predator here, and you had Central Park here,
Yes.
that would say, wait, but hold up. How could you have that level of disparity? That's what I think she's saying when it comes to the data.
But that I get that part,
Let this
but
guy.
I don't compare Super Predator and Trump's comments about Central Park 5 because for me, Super Predators was something that actually fueled what we're now trying to undo in our
And that
criminal
full
justice
page
system.
ad fueled the potential listing
One
of
full page
five
ad in a
innocent-
one
and
page.
Hold up. We are not going. First of all, we're going to say actual facts. It was not just a single full page ad.
Okay.
One second. It was a full page ad in multiple papers and
Interview.
and multiple interviews.
Yeah.
But again, I think, see, you get caught up in the wrong thing.
No, that.
No, listen. I'm not, first of all, I'm not comparing the law and the ad. What Shereen is laying out, that we have, no,
I get it.
no, not the level. What she's laying out is the intensity of a discussion on social media, which now causes you to say, okay, what was fueling it? What? Because if it was a natural, organic conversation, you would have similar numbers in terms of folks talking about it. What she's saying is, no, because you would. What you had is
Okay. We're talking about actual laws. Super Predator was a medical term that Hillary Clinton used.
If you don't understand data, if you don't understand a clear, concerted communication strategy that drives a conversation, and so what she's saying is, if you actually study the data and see where it was coming from, what you had is you had this. No. You had a rocket ship fueled by jet fuel that was driving this thing, that was throwing out so much stuff.
And the jet fuel was the Russians.
A small amount over here.
Right.
So the issue here is,
We barely
who was
heard about the
driving
Central
it,
Park
and
5.
why were they driving it? And to her point, it was all designed to purposely turn African Americans against Hillary Clinton. Shereen, is that correct?
That is correct.
Well-
Also, please be clear. As I'm sitting here, I have to understand. I grew up in Harlem. I was there in 1989. I will tell you what happened to my community when this whole thing went down. I will never forget it. I will also say that the fact that what I watched happen in comparison to that dude and Hillary Clinton is night and freaking day from my experience living through the rest of that.
Well, for from my experience living in the United States of America, who actually heard Hillary Clinton make those comments about black, but she made the comments. It was a mythical term that she decided to use, and she was out there advocating. Whether she didn't sign, whether she signed,
Y'all, they not letting each other talk.
Why are we in a conversation comparing the
Here's why.
That's not what
That's why.
You said because your argument is that they should be here and they shouldn't be here. Super Predator was much bigger.
No.
Trump said.
No.
There was a
No.
Super Predators. There was a law.
Okay, first of all, hold on. You're wrong. Melly, you're wrong.
Yes, it did. So when she was talking about Super Predator, what was she referring to?
Stop. Shireen, go ahead.
990 conversations. 1989 is when he pushed that whole agenda.
I'm talking about Super
Excuse
Predator.
me, Shireen, finish.
Let's not do this.
Shireen, finish.
Okay, but let's not.
Don't interrupt me. Don't interrupt.
Let's not do this.
Don't interrupt me. She won't do that.
Okay, well let's not.
If you don't interrupt, she's not holding her hand up.
This is what we
Excuse me.
do.
No. I am the host of this show. Excuse me. If you don't interrupt, she doesn't have to hold her hand up.
To do that.
But don't hold your hand up. Shireen, I got this. Shireen, finish your point.
1990, there was a whole history of like these Harvard execs or researchers who basically came up with broken windows. This is not Super Predator, but this is the lead to Super Predator conversation. And then we got to 1994. By the way, 1989 was Mayor Dinkins. 1994 was Rudy Giuliani. And he is the one that changed the policy to institute what is now in policy called stop and frisk. That's where the law came from, not Hillary Clinton and Super Predator.
And here's the pitch.
Right.
This conversation has nothing to do with her comment in terms of
Right. We're talking about
what we're talking about here, with what Shireen's her report laid out. Now the Senate Intelligence Committee is how Russian troll farms took keywords and phrases and used it to purposely drive the anxiety and targeting of black voters.
To
and
suppress.
how they also used Black Lives Matter to drive it towards white voters, and that's how they did it. And the problem is we
They're
have a
still
government
doing
that
it.
refuses to still address
I
this
totally
issue,
get that.
and that's what's up.
I totally
Shereen,
get it.
if folks want the report you put together, where can folks go check it out?
Yeah, stop is called, you can find it at stoponlinevowa.com. So stop online, VAW.com.
StopOnlineVAW.com.
And I'm actually in the final phase of our second report. So there's more to come.
All right, Shereen Mitchell, we sure appreciate it. Thanks so much.
All right. What I can tell you is that what I get from this conversation, number one, listen to black women. Listen to black women. She is sitting on this panel, obviously with people, obviously with people who don't agree with her, talking about nothing but facts. If there's anybody who is going to try to make the argument that the gentleman was making, that you heard about the Central Park 5 ad in the newspaper that Trump took out calling for the execution of those boys, as much as you heard about super predators, that is a damn lie. You heard there were people showing up to her fundraisers. I am not a super predator. And she's right. Hillary Clinton was not even, and here's what I want to do actually. I actually want to go to the line that people were talking about.
The C-SPAN networks bring you long-form public
This
affairs
is the
programs from
actual
the nation's capital,
line
public service of your
that
television
the super
provider.
predator
C-SPAN,
thing
created
came
by
from. Just
cable.
because I know most people have never listened to it.
Is to take back our streets from crime, gangs, and drugs. And we have actually been making progress on this count as a nation because of what local law enforcement officials are doing, because of what citizens and neighborhood patrols are doing. We're making some progress. Much of it is related to the initiative called community policing, because we have finally gotten more police officers on the street. That was one of the goals that the president had when he pushed the crime bill that was passed in 1994. He promised 100,000 police. We're moving in that direction, but we can see it already makes a difference. Because if we have more police interacting with people, having them on the streets, we can prevent crimes. We can prevent petty crimes from turning into something worse. But we also have to have an organized effort against gangs. Just as in a previous generation we had an organized effort against the mob. We need to take these people on. They are often connected to big drug cartels. They are not just gangs of kids anymore. They are often the kinds of kids that are called super predators. No conscience, no empathy. We can talk about why they ended up that way, but first we have to bring them to heel. And the president has asked the FBI to launch a very concerted effort against gangs everywhere. In addition to that, he has appointed a new drug czar. You probably...
That was the comment. That was the comment. And there was a lot of bad things happening in the 90s. I don't know if you lived in DC, if you lived in LA during that time. There was just an unprecedented amount of violence in inner cities all over the country. I'm not giving her an excuse for saying what she said. And she apologized and said she wouldn't have used that word if she were to say it again. But it was just blown up so much, and it wasn't our doing. Someone, Russians, fed us that narrative that that one line was so outrageous, as Roland Martin was saying, jet fueled it to the top of the conversation, that became the #1 voting issue for Black Americans in 2016. When you compare her to a man that sat in front of an audience and literally said, "What the hell do you have to lose? Your schools are crumbling. Your neighborhoods have nothing but gangs and violence and drugs. What do you have to lose?" Now, if that comment wasn't worse than super predators, I don't know. Maybe you need to get your ears cleaned, because in my opinion, it just was, one was an insult and the other was an inartful way of describing something that really was an actual problem in the country at that time. So I just want people to, this reaction video is a bit longer, but I think it's a really important issue, and I want every single Black American, every American, but particularly every single Black American in this country to understand how voting works. You don't get a Messiah. You don't get a Jesus Christ. You don't get a candidate that you agree with on everything. That does not happen. The purpose of voting and the way politics works is you look at the platform that they're running on. You don't dig back into their, the ash heaps of their voting records. You look at what they are proposing right now. Are they trustworthy enough to believe that they are going, and not even if they're trustworthy enough. Look, when you have a candidate like Donald Trump, you don't get the luxury of saying, well, do I trust Hillary Clinton? Do I trust Joe Biden? I don't know if they're going to. You have to choose, call it the better of two evils, whatever. But that is every single election you will ever vote in, because there's no perfect candidate. A perfect candidate in somebody's eyes is an imperfect candidate in another person's eyes. That's just the way politics is. And if you don't like it, why don't you run for office? You be your own perfect candidate. Otherwise, take your asses to the polls and stop allowing Vladimir Putin and his Russian cronies, a whole intelligence agency, whole intelligence apparatus is being used to influence not just your vote, but your psyche. Your psyche. It's creating anger and angst among black folks to the point that I have friends suggesting to me that we need to spill out into the street. We need to go to war. Somebody suggested to me, with the police. We need to go to war with them. They got military weapons. They got military capability. They have tanks. I'm sorry. Are we the Confederacy now? The last time somebody went to war with the United States government, it didn't bode too well for them, right? It didn't bode too well for them. They lost. And guess what? We would lose a war against the police in this country. We would. Why? Because the law's on their side. So what we do is we should be infiltrating the system and changing the laws from within, and that starts with voting. Thanks, guys. I'll see you on the next reaction video. Bye.